They say deep in the swamps of southern Louisiana, there's a dirt road that doesn't appear on any map. Follow it long enough, and you'll find a crumbling structure hidden behind moss-covered oaks, what locals call the Lost Orphan House. The walls are gray, sinking into the earth, the windows nailed shut from the inside, and if you stand there long enough, you might hear the faint sound of children crying in the wind. For decades, no one dared to enter. Older residents warn that every man who tried to explore it went missing, or returned days later unable to speak. They say the place was once an orphanage run by the church in the early 1900s, a refuge for abandoned children after the Great Flood. But somewhere along the line, something went terribly wrong. Newspapers from 1936 mention the building only once. A small article titled "Local Orphanage Closes After Tragedy." No explanation, no follow-up. Just gone. Over the years, people tried to track where the orphans were sent, but not a single name ever appeared again in Louisiana's adoption records. It's as if every child who entered that house was erased from existence. Some say the headmistress went insane. Others whisper she was part of a cult that performed secret rituals to cleanse the souls of the forgotten. There are even rumors of strange lights floating above the swamp at night, as if the spirits of those children still wander, waiting to be found. Before we dive deeper into what really happened inside the Lost Orphan House, I want to welcome everyone watching. Hi, hello, everyone. If you love mysterious true stories and dark forgotten history, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments, where are you from, and what time are you watching this? Because tonight, we're opening the doors to a story Louisiana never wanted the world to hear. For nearly 80 years, the Lost Orphan House remained buried beneath vines and silence. Locals refused to talk about it, and the swamp reclaimed most of the land. That was until a small group of urban explorers from Baton Rouge, calling themselves bayou seekers, decided to find the truth behind the legend. They had seen whispers of it on old forums, grainy photos posted by hunters who claimed to stumble upon a forgotten building with crosses carved into the doors. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a drone, they set out on a misty October morning, following a rusted dirt path that GPS refused to recognize. After hours of driving through endless marsh and cypress trees, they saw it a slanted roof, barely visible through hanging moss. At first glance, it didn't even look like a house, just a skeleton of one. The explorers stepped inside, their boots sinking into the muddy floor. The air was thick with mold and something metallic, the smell of rust, or maybe blood. Faded children's drawings clung to the walls, the paper fused by humidity. Names were written in crayon: Annie, Jacob, Mary, Illy. None of them matched any local records. In one of the smaller rooms, they found a stack of old birth certificates and a ledger dated 1934-1936. The pages were brittle, covered in dust, but what chilled them most wasn't the names. It was the notes written beside them in red ink. Phrases like non-compliant, failed, and transferred below. None of them understood what below meant. Their camera caught something strange that day, a door in the basement half covered by rotting boards. The air around it was cold, unnaturally still. When one of them tried to pry it open, his flashlight flickered, and a child's giggle echoed through the hallway. They left within minutes, terrified and shaking. When the footage was uploaded a week later, the video abruptly ended right after the laughter. The channel was deleted the next day. No explanation, no update. That was the last time anyone ever heard from the Bayou Seekers. After the disappearance of the Bayou Seekers, curiosity around the Lost Orphan House grew again. Local historians began digging into church archives and state documents, hoping to uncover who ran the orphanage before it vanished from history. That's when they stumbled upon a name: Sister Margaret DeLune. At first, She appeared to be an ordinary nun assigned to care for abandoned children during the Depression. But as researchers traced her records, things didn't add up. Her file in the St. Landry Parish Registry was marked transferred from unlisted institution. No birth record. No family. And according to church correspondence, she was known for her unusual spiritual practices. One letter even warned, her beliefs deviate from the accepted faith. She speaks of cleansing by the flesh and trials of the innocent. Neighbors who lived near the orphanage before it was sealed recalled strange sounds after midnight chanting, sometimes crying, and occasionally the echo of hymns sung by voices that didn't sound like children at all. One farmer swore he saw Sister Margaret leading a line of children into the woods one night, carrying lanterns. They never came back out. When the orphanage abruptly closed in 1936, the church issued a short statement claiming flood damage and disease made the home unsafe. But Sister Margaret's name disappeared from all records after that date. No grave, no obituary, nothing. Yet, an old photograph surfaced in 1982 during a museum renovation, a faded group photo of the orphans. Standing behind them was a tall woman in a habit, her face partly obscured, her hands resting on the shoulders of two children. Her eyes looked hollow, almost black. Experts analyzing the photo claimed it was untouched. The image seemed to distort near her hands, as if the film itself resisted showing her completely. The most unsettling part. The words written on the back of the photo in childlike handwriting. She said we would all be angels soon. It was the night of August 12, 1936, a night still remembered by a few elderly residents of St. Landry Parish who claim the sky never looked right again after it. According to weather archives, a violent thunderstorm rolled through the bayou just before midnight. But witnesses said what struck above the orphanage wasn't lightning, it was a blinding red flash, followed by silence so complete that even the frogs stopped croaking. The next morning, the building stood still and unbroken. Smoke curled from one side, but there was no fire, no screams, only emptiness. 23 children and Sister Margaret were gone. Their beds were made, plates half filled with supper. Every door was locked from the inside. When the sheriff arrived, he found the chapel floor covered in chalk markings, circles, symbols, and Latin phrases, later identified by a priest as fragments from the Book of Tobit, verses about angels guiding lost souls. The crucifix at the altar had been turned upside down, and the statue of Saint Michael was missing its eyes. Investigators assumed it was an abduction or mass escape, but the swamp around the house was untouched, no footprints, no boat marks, no signs of struggle. Even the dogs refused to go near the building, whining until their handlers dragged them away. A week later, the parish declared the orphanage condemned. Officials burned all remaining records for health reasons, and the story quietly disappeared from newspapers. But locals whispered that on stormy nights, people could still see flickering lights moving through the bayou like small lanterns drifting just above the water. Some said they were spirits of the children, trying to find their way home. Others believed Sister Margaret had taken them to the other side in her twisted ritual of salvation. The tragedy was never solved, no bodies, no remains. Only the echo of laughter carried by the swamp wind, laughter that didn't sound quite human anymore. For decades, the orphanage remained sealed and sinking deeper into the swamp until 2017, when two brothers, Noah and Elias Carter, local documentarians known for exploring abandoned sites across the South, decided to investigate. They weren't ghost hunters, they wanted proof of history. What they found instead was something that made even seasoned police officers walk away in silence. According to Noah's field notes, the house was half collapsed. The walls seemed alive with mold, and the smell of wet wood filled the air. When they entered the chapel, the ground felt hollow beneath their boots. Using ground-penetrating radar, they detected a large cavity under the main floor, a seal-off area about 15 feet below. A hidden basement? They dug for hours until they uncovered a rusted door covered in concrete. The lock was fused, the hinges nearly dissolved. When they forced it open, a gust of cold, stale air escaped like a breath from something that had waited too long to be found. Inside were rows of small beds, their iron frames eaten by rust. On each bed lay a doll hand, sewn, glass eyes missing, faces stitched with black thread. Carvings on the walls showed names, written by shaky hands, repeating over and over, "Margaret loves us. Margaret loves us." Then in the far corner, they found something stranger, dozens of jars lined neatly on a shelf, filled with murky liquid. Inside each jar floated something small, pale, and unrecognizable. Noah's camera captured only a few seconds before the lens glitched and the battery drained completely. Elias swore he heard a child humming behind him, a lullaby, faint but distinct. The same melody was heard again when they reviewed the footage later, though no one had been standing there. A week after the discovery, the brothers released only one teaser frame to social media, a shot of the basement door half open. Then their account went dark. 2 months later, authorities found their van abandoned near the bayou. Cameras and equipment gone, both brothers missing. Nothing else was ever recovered. A few months after the Carter brothers vanished, a retired state archivist from Baton Rouge contacted a journalist claiming to have papers the public was never meant to see. He had spent 40 years cataloging Louisiana welfare records from the 1930s and 1940s, and among the boxes marked religious charities defunct was a sealed envelope stamped confidential. State Experimental Program L47. Inside were 3 faded memos, all referencing the St. Margaret Home for Orphaned Youth, the official name of the Lost Orphan House. The first memo, dated 1934, authorized psychological adaptation trials, funded jointly by a private foundation and the state's Department of Public Health. The second memo requested that unadoptable subjects be retained for extended observation under Sister Margaret DeLune. The final document simply read, "Results inconclusive. Facility compromised. Terminate project and secure all records." The journalist tried to verify the foundation named in the paper's Hastings Biomedical Trust, but it had dissolved decades ago. No tax history, no surviving board members, only a trace of money flowing to local parishes during the Depression. It was as if the organization had been created for one purpose, then erased. When the archivist attempted to publish the documents, his house was broken into. The only things missing were the envelope and his computer. He later told a radio host that a man claiming to be from the Office of Public Safety warned him to leave old ghosts buried. Within a week, the archivist moved out of state. Yet, before he disappeared, he mailed one copy of the memos to the journalist, and those scans are what later circulated online, fueling the belief that the Lost Orphan House was never a simple church refuge. It had been a state-sponsored trial ground disguised as an orphanage. Official agencies continue to deny it ever existed, but if that's true, who sealed the basement door, and why were the words "property of Program L47" carved into the wood? Today, the Lost Orphan House no longer appears on any official map. The swamp has almost swallowed what's left of the structure, but locals still warn travelers not to wander too deep into the cypress trails near Bellefontaine Parish. They say the ground there hums as if something beneath it still remembers. Every few years, a new visitor claims to find the site. Hikers post blurred photographs showing a collapsed roofline or a doorway half buried in reeds. In 2021, a fisherman uploaded a short clip to social media. In the distance, faint lights flickered near the tree line, small and slow, almost like lanterns. When he returned with friends the next day, the path to the spot was gone, swallowed by mud and water. One local sheriff finally admitted off camera that his department receives a handful of calls every summer about screams or children's laughter, echoing through the bayou. Each time, patrols are sent. Nothing is ever found, only footprints that stop suddenly mid-trail. Tourists sometimes take fragments from the ruins, a doll's shoe, a wooden cross, a rusted door hinge. Many of them later report hearing knocking sounds in their homes, or voices calling from rooms that should be empty. A few have even mailed those items back to the parish office, wrapped in cloth, marked only with the words, "Please return to the house." Historians continue to dig for answers. Was Sister Margaret part of a failed government experiment? Were the children victims of disease, ritual, or something that can't be explained by science? No one knows for certain. The files remain sealed, and anyone who's tried to reopen the investigation has faced sudden transfers or lost paperwork. What remains are whispers, fragments of truth trapped between legend and fact. And sometimes, on nights when the fog drifts low over the bayou, locals say they can still see small shapes moving behind the trees, lanterns glowing softly in their hands. Maybe they're still looking for the way home, or maybe they never left.